everybody. Welcome to Be in the Know, Table Games and More. And my special guest today, all the way from the UK, is Geoff Hall. And if you don't know who Geoff Hall is the creator of the Switch Blackjack, Zappit, Free Bet, Zombie, and more recently, Lucky Cat. Geoff, welcome.
Hi, Benny. How are you?
So before we get into the life and times of Geoff Hall, tell me what's it been like in quarantine in the UK the last few months?
Well, because I work from home, it hasn't changed dramatically for me because I'm used to being surrounded by the four walls and working, at my desk. The major impact, really, Benny, is that I'm not going to Vegas at the moment. I've already cancelled 2 trips this year. I had to. And I can't promote my new games in Vegas because although they've just opened, they're treading carefully at the moment. I don't think they want to be training dealers on new games, and I certainly can't go over there and promote them either. But apart from that, when I'm back here in the UK, it's pretty much business as usual. Been playing a lot of backgammon.
Well, I know besides marketing your games in Vegas, you're kind of a Vegas junkie. You just I can see when you're there, you're just enjoying yourself and having a good time and not being able to get that Vegas fix. It's hurt a lot of people out there. So let me ask you: are the casinos in the UK, are they back open or not?
They are. They're doing a very similar thing, I believe, to what's happening in America, which is they're doing a gradual opening. They're being very careful. They're keeping aware of the social distancing. Unfortunately, I did read a report that one of the big casino chains over here is closing a lot of its poker rooms. So the poker is going to suffer quite dramatically over here, I believe, because they're just not prepared to bring that amount of people in this current climate. I haven't been to a UK casino during this unfortunate time, so I can't really report as a live, from what I've seen. But I do believe that it's a very gradual, clubs are opening on July the 4th, bars and pubs are going to be open. So I believe that's when the date is for the casinos to open, but tread very carefully.
Well, what I was asked in a webinar earlier in a year, well, what's going to take the biggest hit and what's going to prosper? And I said, I believe poker would take the biggest hit in this pandemic, and probably ETGs, stadium gaming, would probably benefit from this pandemic. So let's go back in time. Geoff Hall is a young man. There's no gray hair, and all that. Let's not get into that. So anyway, you start off as a gambler, right? Like all of us do. I mean, I was picking up tickets off a racetrack floor at 3 years old, and that just turned into this, which is like it's like being in the mafia. You got to die to get out of it. But anyway, you go through the gambling phase, and you said, I'm kind of a math guy. I'm into that. Let me see if I can develop my own game, right? You're playing other people's games. So somewhere around Y2K 1999, you developed this game called Switch Blackjack. So how did that go at first?
Yeah. By the way, you have to excuse me if I'm perspiring the heat. We're actually getting some nice weather over here in the UK, so my office is pretty warm at the moment. But yeah, you're right. I used to play a lot of blackjack. I used to play a lot of 2 hands. Because in the UK, you were allowed to play, 2 or 3 boxes without any additional penalty of having to increase your bet or anything. So I quite like the one pays the other, variance reduction, or that's how I viewed it. So it was one night when I was playing, I just noticed that my cards, if only they were, the other way round, it would be an idea. So I developed, like you say, blackjack and this switch aspect. And after a while, I thought, well, why not go and launch it into the biggest market I can, go over to Vegas. So it was October, I think 99, it could have been, 99. And I launched the Blackjack Switch for the first time over there. And it was received extremely well, and I got an installation from it.
Now, when you first had it, it didn't have the push 22, I think. Is that correct?
And yeah, you're right.
I'm really envious of Push 22 because just about that same time I got my first thoughts of getting into the table games and betting, but I'm not near as smart as you or Del Webb or one of these guys. But I came up with this surrender blackjack, and it was really tight. I just couldn't get enough house advantage to make it work. And if I would have came up with Push 22 like you did, I'd probably be sitting on an island sipping some kind of something or another. But I didn't. And just tell me, how did that brainstorm come to you?
It's funny because people say there's a fine line, excuse me, between success and failure, and I really do see that during this whole Blackjack Switch episode, because initially I took ties on 17, 18, and 19, and it wasn't quite powerful enough, so I had to stop people from switching aces. So anything like that is going to take away a little bit of fun from the game from the player's perspective. But I had to do it for the math. So the game went into Iowa, and it lasted about 10 months, and it started to dwindle off a bit. And the reaction and the feedback I was getting was that players love to switch. They love that switching aspect. But they don't like it when they've got 18, and the dealer sits there with an 18, and they say, you know what, I'm taking your money. So it went into the Taj Mahal after with the same rules, and it came to a similar conclusion that the switching aspect was really fun. Players liked it, but they didn't like this, losing ties. So I brainstormed. I mean, I could have called it a day then, Benny. I could have just said, I've given it a shot. It's got into 2 good casinos. It's not quite there, but I knew the switch had that great pull to it. So I thought, what can I do? And this is what I thought. My thought process was, let's say you're playing and I'm playing, and you've got 18 and I've got 20, and the dealer makes 18. Although it doesn't affect me, I'm looking at a negative aspect because I'm looking at you losing your money. Very next hand, I've got 19 and you've got a blackjack. Dealer gets 19. Again, you've been paid, but you're looking at a negative aspect. So my first thought was, how can I try and take something back but affect everybody at the same time, so I can affect them at the short, in a smaller number of times? And I thought the only way I could do it is on a dealer total, because that affects everybody. So that was my first stage. Then I thought, what can I do? Well, I thought I could say, I looked at all the dealer totals. I thought, well, what about the dealer bus? What about something instead of paying out players? Because it's quite interesting. If I say to you, it's a push, but I'm taking your money, that sounds a lot worse than if I say to you, oh, you've got to push, you've got to win, but I'm going to push. Because you haven't lost anything.
It's all psychological.
It's psychological. It's the same thing. You lose 1 unit.
So one thing I can say about you come up with the best hooks. You get the hook to get them in, right?
Right.
And of course, Push 22 was the nail in the coffin. But it doesn't seem that bad. It's just like now that you're finding that in face-up pie gal where it's a push on a ace-high pie gal and things like that. And I came up with this game. It's very similar. The house advantage is very hidden, and I found out. I think the more you can hide the house advantage and make it softer and more cushy and comfy for the player, the more successful you're going to be. So you created Free Bet Blackjack, which is an absolute monster. I don't know if it's any place where they're gaming that they don't have Free Bet Blackjack in the United States. It's definitely probably your most successful game so far, right? So my question would be to you, you've had several games that I didn't even mention that had very short life. What's that point in time when you got a great, cool idea and you realize it ain't going nowhere? How do you know that?
Well, sometimes, unfortunately, you don't know until it goes onto the casino floor, but in which time you've spent a lot of money doing the math, designing the logos, working on pay tables, applying to the gaming jurisdictions. I have had a few ideas and I thought that's just not going to fly. And so they've never left my desktop. But there have been numerous games, which you may not even be aware about, that did go onto the casino floor. I had a game called Power Blackjack, I had a game called Never Bust Blackjack that went into Planet Hollywood. Power Blackjack actually went into Fitzgerald's in Vegas, along with a couple of other casinos on the Strip. And they seem to have, the difference with Switch is it's lasted. I mean, it's gone on now, we're talking 20 years now, from when it was first shown, and it's still around. And in order to get that longevity, it is a difficult thing to try and mimic. You know, you can't always put your finger on, why is this game going to be around in 10 years' time? There is a game called Burn 20 Blackjack, which I launched, and that got a very, very unfair trial because I developed free bets at the same time, and I had to pick which one, because if I go to a manager or director like yourself and say, hey, look, I've got 2 games here, chances are I'm going to cause that same dilemma for you, and you might not put either of them in.
Right.
So I had to go with my best one, and I think free bet was definitely my best one, but Burn 20 has not had a good rap because of that. But yeah, you're right. There are games where you don't until you put them on the floor, like Zombie Blackjack, unfortunately, till it goes on the floor, you can't always see the problems that are inherent within the game.
It was so cool to look at the sign, the logo, everything was so cool. And the reason I asked you that question is because I get so many inquiries. I bet you 4 times a month I get game creators like yourself that just don't know when to give up, you know, and I'm very frank with them, you know, and I'll tell anybody in the audience out there, you want to send me a game, just realize that I'm going to tell you what I think. If it's good, I'll tell you it's good. And if it's bad, I'll tell you what I think's bad about it. And a lot of times it's hard for creators to hear that. It's like you're smacking their baby or something like that. And the harsh reality is most games don't make it. And they don't make it. So with that, let me ask you this question. So what game of all your catalog, you know, what surprised you at its success, and which one would be surprised you at its, you know, its failure or downturn?
I'll start with the downturn first, because I think both Zombie and Burn 20 Blackjack, for the reasons I stated earlier, you know, I just didn't give it enough push to gain that momentum. You know, you have to have players coming into your casino saying, have you got that Blackjack Switch, or have you got that free bet Blackjack? You know you've made it then when players are coming in saying, I've seen it down the street and I've been playing it for the last 3 hours. Why can't I play it on your property? And that alerts the managers and the directors, and you know then you've got a winning game. So was I surprised? It sounds really, you know, Blackjack Switch took all my efforts, and I can understand game inventors not giving up, because I could have given up without push 22.
Right.
And I think if a game inventor comes with a game, Benny, and says to you, look, I've got this great game, and it's got a great hook, but it's got an awful compensating rule, that might be something to work with. If the hook's not good enough, then you're not going to have a winning game. And I felt that free bet did have that great hook. So it sounds egotistical to say I wasn't surprised at the success. I was extremely pleased, because you can never guarantee it. But
the question would be, did you think it would be that big? Because it's a monster.
Right, probably no. You're right. I think it's absolutely just. I mean, it's got a great hook. I showed a casino in Vegas, and I won't name them, and they wouldn't put the game in because they said that it had a player edge. Yeah. And I'm like, no. And I said, if you think that, what do you think the players are going to think? And they were like, no, we're not putting it in until we get the math verified.
Come and get it. Come and get you some. Oh, yeah. Push. Yeah. The days at the dealer bus on 22, we kick butt, right? We take all the money. But there is days where there's they never break on 22, and we have some bad days on free bet, and a lot of players like to think they can exploit that, but in the long run they don't. Hey, we're running out of time, but I want to ask you a couple questions. I know you got Lucky Cat. It just come out, and I think it's got like a spin to win feature on it or something like that. I'm not sure. You can explain that real quick to me. And I heard you got a new side bet out, but tell us about them real quickly.
Okay, well, Lucky Cat I developed because rather than, you know, players are looking sometimes for more than just I win 1 unit or I lose 1 unit. And so Lucky Cat was a way of just rolling dice to decide what your payout would be. And there are a couple of pay tables. So if the dealer busts, then they will roll 3 or 4 Lucky Cat dice, depending which pay table, and that will depict your payout. And so you can get, again, it depends on the version, you can get 100 to 1 payout without putting a side bet on. But quite often you'll push as well. But again, players tend not to worry so much if they push, as long as you're not taking money from them that they feel that they've won or earned a push win. So the game is starting to gain traction, obviously, with this pandemic.
Everything got put on hold.
Yeah. But it's in 3 casinos, going into a 4th casino in Vegas. So I'm quite excited by the potential of that game.
Is that your own representation, or is that Side Games pushing that game for you as well?
Well, no, we've had an agreement now. I'm pushing purely 100% myself for the time being. I'm pushing Lucky Cat and my new game that you mentioned called Diamonds, which is a side bet. And again, that has had a great start. It's in 3 casinos in Vegas. It's very straightforward. Like you said, one of your concepts, sometimes you feel it's too easy, you know, surely it can't be that popular. But actually, sometimes the beauty of it, keep it simple. You know, that's what gamblers want. They want a big payout and keep it simple.
This principle works very easy.
You're right.
If it looks like the cockpit of a 747 on the layout, you're probably not going to be successful, Geoff. Anything hiding in the closet that you can tease us with? Just a little tease. Anything?
Yeah, obviously, again, with what's been happening, it's put that back. I was working on a 3-card poker type variation, which had bonus payouts again, depending on certain. I don't want to say too much at the moment because I'm still working on it. The original math came back and gave the player about an 8% edge. So I think it would be quite popular in casinos, but the managers don't like it. So I'm just working on it.
You have them stand in the line, really.
Yeah.
So everybody, I'm going to put down here, if you look below in the See More section, I'm going to put a link to Geoff's website, a little more information on how you can contact him. And sooner or later, I heard the Table Games Conference is on, Geoff, so we'll hopefully we'll see each other there. I've already talked to Charles, and he said unless we get a major second wave, we're going. So I think that'll be the next time. I haven't heard about G2E. I told Mike Shackelford when I interviewed him, it's like the biggest secret since the KFC recipe. I don't know what's going on with G2E. They won't make a call one way or another where it's limited or what. But I really appreciate you joining us today from all the way across the ocean, and I hope you stay safe, Geoff, and we'll see you soon. You got any last words for our viewers out there?
Really, just a case of, if you are designing games, try and get that hook and then work on a compensating rule. And the biggest key to me, again, in a game is anticipation factor. Anything where you've got that anticipation for the player they love, and that can really help the success.
Keep them on the edge of their seats, right? Everybody, Geoff Hall. Thank you, Geoff. Thanks for joining us.